Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I interviewed Major League Baseball scouts Brad and Taylor Cameron. Together, they brought two different perspectives to the topic of identifying and developing talent in Major League Baseball. Brad has been a professional baseball scout for 33 years. He started with the Cleveland Indians in 1990 and has been with the San Francisco Giants for the last 18 years. With the Giants, he's earned 3 World Series rings for their victories in 2010, 12, and 14. Brad was kind enough to bring those in for the interview, and we got a great picture for the show. Taylor was originally drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. After being a player, he started his career in 2012 as a Southern California area scout with the Minnesota Twins. He then went and worked for the Seattle Mariners before joining the Texas Rangers in 21. Last year, in 2023, the Rangers won the World Series. Now, Taylor will join his dad in receiving his first World Series ring when the season opens a little bit later this year. Finding talent in sports, business, or any organization is always one of the hardest and most important things to do as a leader to be successful. In this episode, I explored the similarities of corporate recruiting to the scouting process, the importance of evaluating player makeup and character, and the role of technology in scouting. And yes, with Taylor in the room representing the Texas Rangers, I did have to ask the question many Los Angeles Dodger fans are wondering. What is the possibility that Clayton Kershaw will be joining the Texas Rangers when he returns from surgery as a free agent? Please listen and hear his response. I hope you enjoy. Good evening, gentlemen. How you doing?
Good, Troy. How are
Troy.
you?
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you guys for being on the show. I'm really looking forward to this. It's, for Brad, for you and I, we've known each other 15, 20 years, and I've been able to kind of see pro scouting from afar. And then Taylor, as you've kind of worked your way up into there, it's going to be a really exciting show and being able to kind of really give two different perspectives of the state of scouting in Major League Baseball. So thank you.
Well, before we start, if I can, I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I did want to give you a hat from the Texas Rangers clubhouse celebration when we clinched a postseason berth in Seattle. So
Wow.
Just wanted to give you that.
That is awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I have a history with your dad in baseball hats. I got some San Francisco Giants. I'm a runner.
Okay.
So and I go through hats fairly frequently. So
Yeah.
Brad,
He tells me they're worn out. I need a new hat. I give him a new hat.
thank
You can wear that anytime. We need as many fans as we can get. We just won the World Series. I'm starting to see a lot more Ranger gear out there. So
Yeah, Taylor, just kind of as an aside, I have companies outside, and one of the companies does a lot of work in Dallas, and so I have a place in Dallas, and I've been to was there at the old stadium in Texas when you could really get seats all the time, and now that they've moved, it's kind of harder to get a seat.
too hot. You
Yeah.
can get seats all the time because it's too hot.
Yeah.
Now we have a roof, and it's a beautiful facility, and it's a cathedral for sure. And we're having a great time with good players and good fans and great managers we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, So again, and I thought what would be interesting to talk a little bit about is that this episode is really trying to look at how do you identify talent and how to develop talent, especially from a pro scouting perspective where the stakes are so high and very visible. This episode too is I come from a corporate background. So really what I try to do is crosswalk things that will help people that do the type of work that I do, which in the corporate world, a lot of times, first of all, people are the most important part. So trying to find good talent is how you grow a company. It's how you satisfy clients. And it's really how getting the right people to work together, that chemistry and finding what will work makes a working environment that's really important to the people that actually, are employed in the company. So that to me, what I'd hope to be able to do is to be able to give a perspective of that and be able to talk about really the similarities and, some of the processes and activities that you guys go through to kind of identify that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then, Brad, if you wouldn't mind, I thought it would be helpful maybe to get just a little bit of a background of where you started from and got into the scouting business.
Sure. I grew up in South Torrance, went to South Torrance High School, played baseball there and basketball. From there, I went to Cerritos Junior College and played baseball only. We ended up winning a state title there. Then I got recruited to play at San Diego State and played there for 3 years. I was teammates with Bud Black, who is now the manager for the Colorado Rockies. Tony Gwynn was at the school, but he was a basketball player back then. He didn't play baseball his freshman year. So I got to know Tony later on as a scout, and he was the head coach at San Diego State. But as far as getting into my scouting career, after my baseball career was over, I went to work for Delta Airlines and met a friend who was a scout for the Orioles, and I went to work as what's called a bird dog for him for 3 years, and that was in 1990. And just built a reputation, kept going to games, going to, talking to other scouts, and finally got my first job in 1994 with the Cleveland Indians.
Wow.
And from then on, I just a couple different teams, but the last 18 years with the San Francisco Giants.
Great. Yeah. And just to kind of claim some ground there, World Series champions. So you've been there. We're going to talk a little bit about, this episode is not supposed to be about the stuff, but I if you wouldn't mind,
Absolutely.
So
this is a 2014 ring.
Yeah. So let me just kind of show it to everybody. I wish this was mine, but it's not. So, so this World Series rings, may I take this
Yes,
out?
absolutely.
So, big ring.
Yeah, they're big, heavy. They're fun I don't wear them all the time, but they're fun to wear them when I do.
He wears them when he's watching the Kings game at night.
Oh, that's funny. Well, and then Taylor, your ring you'll get for the World Series you got.
Yeah, it's coming. I'm patiently awaiting. I'm not sure when we're going to get it, but I will say that the Cameron family loves Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy was a manager for
our 3 World Series.
Yeah, San Francisco Giants, and we
his
just
World
hired
Series.
him this year in 2023, his first year, and he goes and wins the World Series. So
Incredible.
We are a Bruce Bochy fan.
Very good to us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I will, in the podcast notes, we'll take some pictures of this so that people could kind of get a good idea.
Yeah, I've got all 3 of them, so you can
that's
do what you want with them.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess, Taylor, your background and kind of where you started and got into this.
Yeah. So I played baseball, grew up obviously in a scout's house, and played all sports, ice hockey, quarterback on the football team. I ended up playing college baseball at Cypress College. Went to Valley Christian High School, wasn't recruited, went to Cypress College, played for legendary coach Scott Pickler over there. Ended up getting a scholarship to Point Loma Nazarene University. Played for a legendary coach, Jay Johnson, who's now in the head coach at LSU. Ended up getting drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. When he was working with Pittsburgh, he actually ended up drafting me in the 31st round, so that was pretty cool. I wasn't very good, but I was a really good teammate, and I kept the game going. And when I got released, I ended up coaching back at Cypress College, and that was a really good time of my life of just trying to figure out how to, recruit and roster build and develop, and that ultimately ended up a job with the Minnesota Twins as an area scout. In 2012 was my first year. I ended up doing that for 6 years, and then ended up getting a job with the Seattle Mariners as a West Coast supervisor. So I had the entire West Coast on the amateur side for the draft. And then ultimately that led to the Texas Rangers, where now I focus on the pro side of things, where it's trades, free agents, and also the international side, which is all of Latin America, Japan. So I think it's year 12 or something for me now. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question? Different teams, obviously you've taken on regions when you're here, but you're representing teams on the East Coast or the Midwest or San Francisco, but you're down here in Southern California. How connected to the teams do you stay? I guess there's people like yourself kind of deployed across the U.S. and, collectively as kind of a team of scouts. Is there a lot of collaboration at that level? And, do you guys sometimes have to play some zone offense where you're like, hey, go outside your zone and cover some talent that might come up in a market or outside of your region?
Well, as an amateur scout, he's a pro scout, I'm an amateur scout.
Okay.
So our season starts actually tomorrow, Martin Luther King weekend.
Okay.
So we've had a whole bunch of meetings leading up to this big tournament that we're going to with all of our scouts from the Giants that live on the West Coast. We have a West Coast supervisor who's coming down. Mm-hmm. We collaborate weekly, either by phone, text, Zoom calls. We have Zoom calls every week to plan out our week. And so we do collaborate with our scouts on the West Coast. And so everyone's knows what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We just can't go off and just willy-nilly and do whatever. Everyone has to have a purpose for what they're doing. So. Mm-hmm.
I think it's you're connected as much as you want to be, especially to the big league team, and it's all depending on what your job title is too. If you're in the amateur side, you're a little bit less connected to the big league team because your focus is on drafting talent and looking for players and following them when they're sophomores in high school, and that's your job. And I think that we'll touch on some important things, but I think being the best at what you are and what you're doing, and trying to be the best at your current job is really important in our industry. But I do think that you can be connected as you want to be as far as different departments, what's going on. But I think if you really focus on what you're doing the best, that's what helps out the major league team the most.
Good. What I want to do now that we've kind of set. You guys are now at the scouting level. I want to make a little bit of a parallel into kind of the corporate world. So, when we get ready to grow or to hire people, we kind of go through a process. We'll start out at the very beginning and we'll have open jobs. And then, we'll work away from the open jobs. We'll get requirements for those jobs, what they are. If it's an executive position, functionally, what are they supposed to be good at? What type of capabilities, et cetera. From that, then, we hand that requirement to a recruiter, and the recruiter goes out and finds the right people. You guys might be the equivalent of that, the scouts. Mm-hmm. And then as you kind of go through you guys will evaluate all of these different potential people the way that you guys have just described it and come up with what are prospects. And maybe in corporate world, we'd call that a slate of candidates. And then probably it's a lot different as, in the corporate industry, especially in tech where I'm at, is that then you really quickly want to get to signing, and which would be the draft for you. Mm-hmm. And, so that the steps are fairly similar, but the cycle time, definitely can vary. If I just now started to kind of go through each one of those one by one, and you look at this, the question I have, open jobs, are you guys just, I guess, independently, are you handed a specific job of, hey, we need pitchers this year, just focus there? Or are you, told, hey, I need talent, just find talent and develop it, and then we'll wire them up to what we get? And so maybe, Taylor, I would start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're trying to look for we're trying to look for the best talent. I think it all depends on what job you're in, right? If you're an amateur scout, you're looking for the highest ceiling player. So the things that we look at are, can they hit? What kind of swing mechanics do they have? Can they run? Can they throw? Can they field? And how far can they hit it? I think it's interesting because you're dealing with human beings. I think it's one of the hardest jobs to get right, that I can think of, because there's so many different aspects to hitting on a player, right? Mm-hmm. He signed a couple big leaguers late in the process, but I think that overall, it depends on, what you're looking for. There's not one specific position we're looking for at the amateur level, but I think as you get higher and as you get closer to your big league roster, okay, we have guys under control. They're getting paid this. We like our right fielder. Maybe we don't like our catcher or whatever, right? So maybe we look a little bit more direct at a catcher or a backup catcher for a major league team. So it could be a different instance every year. I think relief pitchers you're always looking to, look for different types of arms and different types of looks for hitters. So I think it all depends on where you're at. If you're in Latin America and you're watching a 15-year-old kid, is he athletic? Is he lively? Is his body lively? He's going to grow into a nice body, right? So all those things we're looking at in order to make a decision. So.
How about you, Brad?
He's absolutely correct on the pro side. That's what he does. I mean, he's looking to build the major league team. But on my side, I'm looking more for athletes to get their feet wet in professional baseball, and looking for high ceilings as well. And we do grade on the 5 tools that Taylor spoke about earlier. Those are the main things we look at, so that we grade them on their tools, and then we also explore their makeup. We talk to coaches, we talk to assistant coaches, we meet the kids in their house, we meet their parents. Makeup's a huge thing for us. We don't want bad makeup guys coming into our organization, so we do a lot of extensive background on the kids, and we just try to get the best athletes that we think are going to help our big league team win someday.
I'd like to touch on that just real quick, because I think that's a really important topic that he brought up, is the makeup and the scouts, because there's so many different things that we that we use to evaluate a player now, whether it's analytics, right? All the technology that we have now, which I think is great for our game. But to know the inside of a person, you need experience, and you need someone who's personable and is willing to go the extra mile to get to know that player. And I truly believe that not everyone that we sign is going to make. I mean, obviously, history says that, but we purposely will have players become professional baseball players, knowing that their chances are a little bit limited, but they're really great people. They're going to keep the game going. They're going to impact other players around them. And I think those guys are just as important as the guys that end up making it to the big leagues and help us win World Series.
So when you guys are assessing, kind of the second component is requirements. So, one of the questions I would have is, when you look at baseball over a period of time, and the requirements could be, I want people to hit home runs, power hitters. I want people to just have a great batting average, consistency. I want maybe two or three key roles of players on the fields, of things that we look for, because those 3 roles are the most important, that historically, because there's now enough experience and data that shows what really kind of what we need to focus on. So under requirements, I guess if you look at the game, do you get handed these requirements? Do you have kind of a set internally that you kind of focus on? Maybe that's what differentiates a good scout, is you guys, maybe that is in your bag of tricks. But I mean, when you look at the requirements, what is it specifically that would be kind of a rank order or something that, or is it just, again, you go back to the raw talent and then you try and take inventory of the most talented person and they just are what they are?
Yeah, for me, it just starts with the raw talent. I mean, that's the first impression, the raw talent, the tools. Is he a good teammate? But these kids we're talking 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and we don't know if they're going to make it to the big leagues or not. But we want to give them the best opportunity and put them in that position to be able to perform and to develop at the minor league level or the college level. But when they're that young, the requirement basically, to be real simple, is just raw talent and tools.
I think we've evolved as an industry and as a scouting industry in general a lot over the past 10, 15 years. There's a lot of indicators that you can find analytically in a player's I like to call it a resume. It's what you've done, right? Whether you're at a junior college or you're at an NAIA college, if you're good, we'll find you. And a lot of it's based off what you've done. So there's a lot of indicators of what we've seen because analytics and numbers have been a part of our game and more prevalent in the past 10 years. There's so many players, thousands of players that we can go back on and look back. This guy did this really well in college. He didn't chase out of the zone as a hitter, right? Let's look at all those guys that didn't chase out of the zone, have good contact rates, and then maybe we can develop some power. So I think that there's no one way to, pick a baseball player on what you want. I think everyone has their biases. I think everyone looks at what they did really well or what they want to do really well. That's my guy. I want to be Mark McGuire and hit it 500 feet. Or I want to be Rod Carew, right, and hit singles and hit 300 every year, or Tony Gwynn. I think when you look at, we like to call it WAR, wins above replacement, right? Replacement level is 0, and however many wins you get after that is how good you are. The guys who hit 500 home runs and the guys that hit 350 end up being somewhere in the same vicinity, right? So there's so many different ways. It also depends on how your lineup is constructed too. If you have a bunch of guys that swing and miss and strike out and hit home runs, you're probably not going to get. You need some balance, and I think that's goes in the corporate world. There's so many people that can bring so many different things, and I think that's. I don't think that we're doing that when we're watching them as an amateur, but when you're talking about the major leagues, you're looking to balance your roster.
While we're talking about requirements, again, as a lay baseball aficionado, somebody that doesn't know all the details, as a consumer of the game, I'm not as much as coming in the third inning and leaving on the seventh inning, but you see the game changing, and I'm a business guy, so there's a part of it. It's you're watching the best sports athletes in the world. There's another part of it. They want the highest ratings ever on TV because that drives revenue. Revenue drives pay capability. So do you see the entertainment value of baseball where home run hitting is exciting or the certain components of every team needs a franchise player where that ends up driving overweighting what you're recruiting for, you're scouting for, or does that really those are the refinements made when you're actually filling out the roster at the very top versus the scouting of the person from 15 years old till whenever? And I guess Taylor, I'd ask you first.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the entertainment piece of it, I do think that it's every scout's dream, right, is to sign someone and have them be a superstar and make a bunch of money and there's no better feeling than having a little kid show up to the park and wearing the guy that you signed's jersey, right? There's a lot of pride. I think there's a lot of pride you take in every one of your signs, but it's really cool when he signed Matt Duffy in the 18th round out of Long Beach State, and he's still playing in the big leagues, right? And a lot of it's because of his scouting ability, but he knew the kid, he knew the makeup, he knew the way he went about it. But as far as your original question is entertainment, I think baseball has done a really good job of trying to get younger fans, but also staying with the older generation. There's still pureness to it, but they're making changes in the pitch clock. They tested it out in the minor leagues. The games are lasting. You're not seeing the 3-hour games anymore. Right. And as a scout, when you go to a game every single night, this is the greatest thing ever because it's 2 hours and 20 minutes and you're out of there. Yeah. Right. Yep. So I do think that overall they're doing a really good job of trying to test things out. I do think that it's the Major League Baseball stadiums now are it's a social hour, right? I mean, you don't really have to like baseball to go to a baseball game. I agree. And I think that's we want everyone to come. We want everyone to enjoy what we are working so hard for. And ultimately, I think we're doing a good job of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to get back to your original question as well, I mean, let's face it, we are in the entertainment business. So every major league team is competing for star players because star players bring fans to the fields. So, but yeah, it basically is an entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, I live between LA and Washington D.C., so I go to national games a lot, and that's another place that the fan base isn't always the most loyal or hardcore, and there's so much business, I'll say, going on that like I'm been to a lot of games, and I could say that I didn't fully follow what was going on. It was a lot of networking and team building and stuff going on. And like you said, before you come in, you got an app, you ordering stuff at your seat. You're no longer walking, it is a total experience. And then the game, like I said, I feel a little bit like we take it for granted. You got the greatest players out there, and we're not fully focused. If I kind of keep going through, and you get to kind of a certain point for scouting and recruiting, for us, technology really has made recruiting a pretty interesting proposition in technology and corporate world is, because we could pretty much recruit now anywhere, all over the world. People, know how to get into that process and that system part of that. And, in the modern day too, with, work being able to be done remote for a lot of the white collar type work, you really do have choices. And with you guys being able to kind of go out there, I mean, this is you've said it, you both said it. These are real people, and they need to kind of show up somewhere, and they definitely, their life once they get into this, it's quite a sacrifice. A little bit of the recruiting and scouting process. Could you talk a little bit about what that experience is, and what would be a day in the life of a scout? And maybe Brad, I would start with you.
This is gonna be good.
Yeah,
yeah, because I got to be honest. I've talked to you many a times, and it's like, where are you going? I was like, I'm starting my day, and like, where? And you're like, I'm heading to San Diego.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, when I first started scouting, getting back to the technology part of it, when I first started scouting, we didn't have cell phones. We used to have to call in on voicemail 3 times a day to get our messages from our scouting director. I had 18 Thomas guides in the back of my car because we didn't have GPS back then. Mm-hmm. And we wrote our reports in triplicate and sent them in to the office and to our supervisor every week. So
you're old.
Things have changed, and I am slowly getting. The technology, the phone part, I'm good. The GPS, I'm good. But technology has really made it a lot easier for us to not only communicate, but write our reports. They get in faster. Everything is sped up so much because of technology. So that's a really good positive. And I've got a basic knowledge of the analytics. Taylor's got a much more extensive background with the analytics, but I know enough. I know enough. So.
I think, it definitely depends on where you're at, like a day in the life of a scout, right? If you're in Southern California, it's considered one of the better areas because you can wake up, you can have your morning, and you can pick a spot to go to and go see a game, right? They call it country club scouting out here. But all over the country in the Midwest, those guys are going... they're driving 40,000 miles a year, right? Just to get to where they need to go, 5-day runs. For me, I travel. I think I was in a hotel 216 nights last year. Wow. From Colombia to Dominican Republic to Japan, all over the United States. So it all depends on where the players are. I do love Marriott's. Marriott's. I don't know if that's a sponsor of your show or not. But, I do travel to where the players are, and that's kind of dictates what we do. So it all depends on where your job is, but it's great when you have games at 7:30. You have your whole game at night or whole day ahead of you, and you go to your game at night. So.
When you guys are actually doing the scouting and you're seeing a game. And you're probably seeing it for that one player, so is it the first inning to the very end, or do you just need to get kind of a taste? How long? What is the commitment? Is it a full game? Yeah,
it's a full game for sure, especially if it's a position player, a hitter.
Yeah.
If we're just seeing a pitcher and he only pitches 5 innings, and we have another game to go to, we might leave that game and go to another game. but yeah, for a hitter, you're staying the whole time. And you got to remember, I'm working 7 days a week. Sometimes one game a day, sometimes two, sometimes three.
Wow.
So this weekend, between tomorrow and Monday, I'll have 9 games that I'll be watching down between Orange County and San Diego.
Wow.
So
I do think that I do want to mention that, like, when we're going to see one player, right? We see him, we track him, we want to see him again. We're also watching everyone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the best stories
Yes.
of scouting have come from, who's this guy? I came to watch the shortstop, but this left-handed pitcher or this first base, whoever it is, right? They showed you something. So you're always watching, right? You're always talking to the parents, you're always talking to the coaches, and you're getting information. So some of the best stories in scouting come from, I didn't know who this guy was until I saw him against the guy I was actually going to watch. So,
Well, that leads me to the next topic then, prospects. So for each of you guys, you identify that player or the potential person. It sounds like you could be tracking them for years. But how many people can you logically keep into a rotation as a prospect? Is it a quota that the team says, Brad, get your top 50 and stay on it, and you've got 80 so you can hedge that people are kind of dropping in, or do you stay is there numbers, I guess, for either one of you, but Brad, maybe starting off.
what I do going into the season is I have my follow list, which I've kept over the summer and previous years, and I'll go out and watch those players. We have so many showcases now in the summertime in Florida and here in Southern California and Texas and Arizona. So we compile a list and we go out and start watching these players. And that's how we compile our list. Then when I get to a game and I'm evaluating a player, I say to myself, is this guy ready for professional baseball? Can he help us win games at the major league level someday? Mm-hmm. If the answer is yes, then I'll write a report on him and I'll turn him in. And that it varies every year from maybe 65 reports for the draft to maybe 45. So It just depends on who I feel is ready for professional baseball and can maybe help us win a World Series someday.
And Brad, before I go to Taylor, do you show up at a field and there's 2 other scouts there, or do you? So this is usually kind of a known prospect, and competition's pretty stiff.
Yeah. No, that's it's a pretty close knit group of scouts in Southern California. We all kind of show up at the same games a lot of the times. We're all good friends.
What about you, Taylor?
Well, the best is when you show up to a game when there's no one there, and you're going, I think I beat someone, right? That's the best.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, just to put it in perspective, being a major league player is really hard. Finding a major league player is really hard. If you put all the major league players that have ever touched the major leagues and you put them into Anaheim Stadium or Dodger Stadium, right, it wouldn't fill up half of the stadium. So we go out and we watch a game every single day. And if you're lucky in your career, you might be able to sign 10, maybe 15 major league players throughout your career, right? So if you put it in perspective, you're seeing so many players and you have interest in so many guys. But the reality is a lot of them don't make it for whatever reason. Some guys get hurt. Some guys are good enough. But I think that, like, wherever you're at, like if in the pro scouting, I have different organizations, right? So I have over 1,000 reports that I write every single year. And so when we're potentially making a trade with a certain team, we have to be able to be ready for that guy, if he's available, to have an updated report on him. And it's similar to the amateur world. And so it all depends on where you're at in scouting, but it could go from 65 and it could be to over 1,000, right? So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of thought, the thought processes that go through your head about, because everyone's different and you want to give them the credit that they deserve, right? And everyone's at a different level in their life, a different level of their playing career, and you have to put all that into consideration. And now we have tools to help us based off of the history as well.
So when you get to the last part of that draft, or you're going to sign somebody, you've kind of been with them, you've seen them kind of go through, and like you said, your stats. If I just use what I heard, 45 to 75 people that are kind of on the watch list, and you might sign 10 to 15 pro people. You probably, when they go through and they actually join the team, like you said, sometimes they'll make it, sometimes they don't. What is the duration of, like you said, you show up at a field, Taylor, and you're by yourself. You feel good that day, but they're going to be seen for a year or two or more. Is this a journey? Are you following the 15-year-old all the way to 22? How long does that journey last?
Yeah, it could happen 6 months, could happen 6 years. I think it all depends on when you first see them. I do think that like there's at some point you have to be willing. You're investing money, right? It's real money, and you're investing money into these players if you're potentially drafting them, right? So I think that depending on the money situation, depending on there's guys that I've signed that I've seen twice, right? But I've followed them and seen their actual numbers and video and all that stuff. So there's guys like that, but it wasn't for a big investment. But if you're making a big investment in something, you want as much history as you possibly can. You also want as many opinions as you can too with that organization. So it's not just you seeing them; it's you coupled with the analytic department, coupled with 3 cross-checkers seeing them to make a call on what this player is, where he goes in the draft. So I think that it all depends, but I think any information is good information, and the more information is better.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify, my 45 to 65 reports is just from Southern California. We've got 18 scouts around the United States. And when it comes to the draft, we've got thousands of reports in on amateur players, college, high school, and junior college players. And so it's up to our scouting department, our cross-checkers, and all of us area scouts to put a list together for the draft. So it's quite complex.
So let me just kind of shift to something that I'm just interested in. I'm not sure it's going to help our audience in understanding finding talent, but farm clubs. So you guys sign people and you kind of move them up into the organization. They could be signed and potentially, I guess, I don't know how realistic it is they actually play for the team, but there's everything from low A, double A, triple A, and maybe even more. And, and it's funny is that we were joking a little bit before the interview is that, again, I'm not a hardcore baseball guy, so I don't follow every bit of the details, but I live in a big city. We have between the Dodgers and the Angels here. And you hear about all of these these different divisions, that I just mentioned. And then you pick up a newspaper and you see the local newspaper has Little League. The regional paper has high school and some college and then an absolutely pro. Where in the heck did the farm clubs go? I mean, with so many baseball players, it's like UFO out there. It's like, and maybe it's just because I don't live in a city that's served by that. Right. But it just seems like there is a whole ecosystem that's like blacked out and not visible in the press. And then, but yet when they do make it, there seems to be a lot of coverage.
Out of nowhere. Yeah.
What is the?
Just so you know, Troy, we got a team at Lake Elsinore.
Okay.
Rancho Cucamonga.
Okay.
Where else?
Yeah, I think
Cal
overall.
League. Yeah, those are minor league teams. Those teams are covered by the local newspapers in Rancho Cucamonga and Lake Elsinore.
Oh, okay.
And they're not really covered nationally. I mean, there's just not enough print in the paper to cover them all.
Okay.
Yeah, I think these kids when we're scouting them, they need somewhere to go where there's low pressure, right? They have fans there. Some minor league teams draw great, 5,000, 10,000 a night. And it's a sense of pride for the community, right? I think that they do a really good job of making it their own and welcoming the kids. And I remember I had a host family when I played in the minor leagues, and I lived with them, and every player had someone to live with there, and it was them in the community that took them in, took complete strangers off the street, professional baseball player, here's your room, come live with us, here's breakfast. So I do think that there's a sense of bring America coming together, right? Like I think that they're welcoming people into their homes is a big breaking bread with people is a great thing. But I do think it's an environment to where there's not a lot of media pressure. There's not a lot of expectations. Obviously, you want to do well. But when we're looking at these guys and their future talent, there needs to be a breeding ground for that, right? I think when you look at football and you look at basketball, when they get drafted, they're right in the show, right? They go there, and you see them on TV, you see them on Sundays. It takes us a little bit longer. One, because we play every single day. That takes a lot for the body to handle that. So they need to get used to doing that. And, playing every day is a skill, and when you play once a week, it's a little easier to show up every single day and be on TV and all that stuff. So I think that the minor leagues does a really good job of that. And it also teaches you a lot of life skills too, the bus rides and the food and all that stuff. There's that carrot that is at the end of the stick, which is the major leagues, and you're working as hard as you can to get there.
Yeah. It and that's probably going to take me to kind of my next topic here, which is, again, if I looked at baseball as a business, in the Fortune 500 or in even successful small businesses, you get out of college and you decide at that point after if you go to college or high school and you decide you're going to go into the professional world, you try to make a decision up front as like, do I want to go work at a big company, like a Fortune 500 or the military or somewhere where I can kind of get brought in, institutionalized, and I get branded as somebody that spent 3 years at Boeing or however many. And then there's some benefits to being able to come into a workforce and work at scale. Or you go to a small company and you actually learn how to do everything because they don't put you in the corner and say, do this. It's like, we need people, let's do whatever it takes to be successful. And somebody could do a tour of duty there and they end up getting a great experience out of it. And it all catches up about mid-career where your whole collection of all of your background kind of comes together to make your rest of your career successful in whatever way it's going to be. Baseball and scouting. I always hear terms like, and this could be terms that I've heard when I was very young. So Brad, please. But I think, the big markets, the small markets, and, they, I'll just, I grew up here in LA, obviously. So Dodgers big. Angels, even though they were local, they never really did good when I was a kid. Nolan Ryan was there, he ended in the Rangers, but I think, but it seemed like a smaller market team as compared to the Dodgers. As I got older and started, especially in corporate world, and I work in every big city in the nation, I ended up in Boston. I can't get a ticket to the game while I'm in town unless I have buddies that have great tickets. But it's like a privilege thing. But if I go to Cincinnati and I'm doing a big job for Toyota or something, I can get into their stadium and a lot of times, and a little bit funner audience too, because they're like down to earth, everything. They're the real fans. And, but if you're a pro scout or a scout that scouts for Major League Baseball in general, it would seem like going to what I would call a small market team, and you need to correct me because I don't mean anything bad by it, but a team that doesn't have that media draw, or when you see them on TV, it doesn't have like every seat to the top filled, versus another team. It seems like as being a scout, you might be able to start easier in a smaller organization or versus a larger one, or was that like an old time perspective?
Yeah, I don't think that ties into what we do. I think that like there's 30 major league clubs. I think that we look at every single one of them with the same amount of, some have more access to payroll and revenue and all that stuff. But I think as a scout, I mean, you're honored to work for something way bigger than yourself, and whether it's a low market team, a low revenue team, it's still a major league team. You're still employing the best players, 750 players in the world. And I will say that, like, if there's not a lot of fans coming, winning brings that. You know, if you scout better, sign better players, have a better process, whatever it is, you start winning, they're going to come and they're going to fill up your stadium, because it's an exciting deal. When you're about to win a World Series, you know, like I said, everyone's been through this. Everyone's had touched baseball in some way. And when it's there in their town and you're winning, they're going to show up.
It's interesting, Brad, before you answer, it's like just the Texas Rangers. So I watched the World Series a little bit, maybe because I knew you had something to do with it. But it was funny. It's I think 50-year-old team, never won the World Series. And I gave you my example 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, living in the Dallas area. You can get into that stadium, but it was a hot box. It, you know, like you said, you burn out there. I looked at the stats preparing for this interview to talk to you guys, and I noticed that like that World Series was a little bit underpopulated. But then this year, you know, they're anticipating like you said, now it's the hottest ticket in Dallas, right? And so it just seems interesting that you know, that like you said, winning brings it. But I was just kind of curious to, you know, from your perspective, I guess, Brad, when you look at it, you know, you actually have the benefit of like 33 years.
Yeah.
Have you seen that change?
Well, looking back, it didn't really matter who I got hired by. I mean, because I just wanted to work in baseball. Cleveland Indians, my first job was a small market team. It didn't matter to me. The scouts pay scale is pretty much the same across the board, all 30 major league teams. Big market teams might have better company cars or anything like that, or maybe more meal money.
Yeah.
But we're all doing the same job for about the same amount of money. So, and the thing that differentiates small market and large market team is basically revenue. You know, you get revenue from the TV contracts and the fans you put in the seats. So, yeah.
One last thing on this topic is, Brad, you and I had talked about this before, is like some of the major league teams really have a refined farm club process or a way to develop talent. You know, you know, I always wondered when you told me that, is that, you know, is it all 30 teams have all 3 levels, 4 or 5 levels, or do 2 or 3 of the biggest teams that have the biggest payroll really refine out their farm system? Because and again, this is the uninformed guy. I noticed like the Dodgers, for example, I feel like they're known for their farming system. And I noticed that a lot of the trades they do, they use people that are in their system as trade currency, where I don't see that a lot with some of the teams. Maybe it's because I'm watching what's going on here, but I think that's like a sign of a really healthy system when you can actually make trades from the farm to get actual pros and switch at the highest level. Any differentiation in that, or is every team kind of outfitted to that level?
Well, in our last collective bargaining agreement, it was agreed upon that you can only have 180 players in your system, in your minor league system. And so that cut down on some of the minor league teams, and some of the teams that had more money had more minor league teams. But now we're all on equal footing. So you got a low A team, you got an A team, you got a double A team, and a triple A team. And that's about it. But everybody has their minor league spring training facilities too. And the spring training facilities are amazing to develop players. That's where our player development staff works. So when we draft players, we send them to the minor league spring training facility. Player development takes over and develops the players.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are the unsung heroes. Those are the ones you don't hear about, right? Those are the ones that are putting in the work with the players every single day. We've seen them. We've passed them off to those guys. We've told them what they can do. Player development, it's an old saying of scouting. We tell them what they can do. Player development tells them what they can't do, and then they work on that, right?
Exactly.
But I do think that, like, as an industry, we have done an amazing job of investing in future investments, right? So we not only is the signing bonus sometimes a lot, but we've invested in the food, we've invested in the coaching, the mental skills. I think every single minor league team has a mental skills coach on site with the team every single day. So I think that, like, holistically as a industry, we've seen everyone do an amazing job of developing the players, because ultimately you want major league players. So you want to give them the best opportunity to touch the major leagues and be impactful.
Yeah.
So as we kind of get ready to close here a little bit, what I'd like to do is to, maybe have each one of you, if you wouldn't mind, leave something for the listeners that are out there that really, it could be from the frame of reference of, we get a lot of people sometimes that are athletes that would, we've had different shows on, and we get either, we had a show on an artist came on, and so it was people that wanted to break into art, and then there was people that, really was wondering what the process was. If you're a pro baseball and you hear two pro baseball scouts kind of talking, you kind of take away as like, oh, what do I need to work on? So that might be something that you might want to kind of give advice to. Or if you're in the system and you're already kind of going through this and you're trying to, get an idea, how long is it? Am I going to have to do this until I get to the pros? I guess what would you tell people, or the people that listen and they want to talk to their kids about this?
I'll take the amateur perspective.
Yeah,
You take
go ahead.
the pro
Yeah.
perspective. If I'm talking to an amateur player and they always ask me, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get better? The first thing I say is stay in school, go to school, just because it's really important. It's really hard to make it to the big leagues. It's really hard to get drafted, but stay in school. Then number two is if this is your dream, then do anything and everything possible to get to that point of your development, so you have a chance to get drafted. And then after that, just be a good citizen and show up and do everything you're told.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that those are all good points. I think that there's, if there's a parent out there with a kid who wants to play baseball, I think that like understanding to be the best at where you're currently at your position, and I think that goes all the way up to, I'm 38 years old. My generation, I think that like we've lost a little bit of like the next step, the next job, the next what can I do, climbing the ladder. Like, how about be really good at what you're currently doing? Be the best at it. And if you're the best at that, people are going to notice. And I think that if you're the best shortstop on the JV team, of your high school team, people are going to notice. That varsity coach is going to notice. If you're in a backup role and you only get to face left-handed pitchers in the major leagues because you're a right-handed batter, be really good at that and just dominate that part of it. So I think that wherever you're at in your life, like, be the best at that, and then things will take care of itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. It's interesting is that, I've had a couple Coast Guard admirals on, and, and I'd ask them about career stuff, and they're like, be focused on the job you have. Don't look past the job you're in right now. And so it seems like, from a sports perspective, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it wouldn't be a good ending with you guys if I need to kind of set the record straight with your dad on a couple things. Is that, he has, I've had San Francisco Giant hats for many years, and but I go back and forth to DC, and I ran in a 5K, and they took pictures, and I posted them on social media.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I know this is going.
yeah, so then I come back to Southern California, and I'm going to a charity event, and your dad's at the charity event, and it's a room full of people, and he wore one of his World Series rings, so he got a lot of attention. So he was holding court at this charity event. It was a pretty big deal. And I go, oh my God, that's awesome. I go, yeah, I get his hats, and and I go running with him. And he goes, no, you don't. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah, I know, I give you those hats, but the first thing I see on social media is you with Dodger hats on. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, there's something about loyalty. So your dad kind of scolded me. But it was funny is that, when you wear a San Francisco's Giants hat around, and I'm a runner, so you don't make a lot of friends on the trails around here with that hat. So are the Texas Rangers going to steal Clayton Kershaw? So just to kind of set the table, is we know he had his surgery. We know that he's kind of recovering, and he'll make a decision here when he comes back. But he's from Dallas.
Dallas,
So are you guys going to steal him?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about any free agents, So
I guess he is a free agent. Yeah.
I won't be commenting on that, but I think anytime you get a talent like Clayton Kershaw, whether you're the Dodgers or the Rangers or the Giants, whoever you want, I think you have a chance to win some ball games.
Yeah.
Not only is he a good player, he's a good person. He really is. He'd be an asset to any major league club.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like with all the buzz going on right now with Ohtani at the Dodgers and all of that, it seems like, there's a lot of talent. So yeah, and
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, it's good for baseball. I think it gets people focused back on it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, you guys, I just wanted to tell you guys thank you so much for coming in today and being on the show. And
This was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you
Thank
so
you, Troy.
much for having
Appreciate
us.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you. Well, you guys have a good evening, and
All right.
we'll take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.